So Topher, check this out. UK insolvencies have hit a 13-year high.
Crazy.
And it's all bullshit. All bullshit. Let me tell you why. This lie has been shoved down the throats of small business owners, but the full data, if you look at it, tells a way better story. So this comes from Reuters, and the article talks about how there were 22,109, I think,
some
companies.
Insane amount, yeah.
22,109 insolvencies in 2022, the highest since the global crisis, and up 57% from a year earlier. Yeah. But what I really hate, what I detest about all this, Topher, is it's just bullshit.
Yeah, because if you go back 14 years, it's almost completely not even newsworthy, is it?
Right. Yeah, 14 years ago, I forget what the number was, but it was significantly higher. It was like massively, outrageously high, because that was at the global financial crisis. So all of a sudden, you kind of go, "Is it that big?" I mean, here's a different way. Here's a different way of saying it, Topher. Let me remind myself of the percentage. If you take the 22,000 insolvencies and you divide it by, there's approximately 6 million limited companies in the UK right now. That's 0.36. So just over a third of a percentage point. Yeah. And so if you're going to go, okay, there is a 1 in 250 chance that you are going to, that your business is going to go become insolvent, which, by the way, doesn't mean the company failed. It just might need a restructure. You're going to go, but it's not the data. The data is, what they're pointing to is accurate. It is how it's framed up. It's the narrative that goes in to support that data. Because, Topher, think about the people listening to this podcast. If you're listening to this right now, we're not like other business owners. A lot of those 6 million companies are just solopreneurs that have got no ambition for growth. They may just own a small, tiny little shop or a takeaway. Not to be clear, Topher, not that there's anything wrong with those businesses, but they're not ambitious and looking to grow and scale like the listeners to this podcast are.
Or they're not even a business. They just own a product that they sell, and it's not really a business structure as well. Again, nothing wrong with that, but it's not our typical listener for sure.
Right. So I mean, the point being that you can't believe the stuff that they're shoving down your throats. You've got to read between the lines, and actually just ask yourself this: if you listen to this right now, it's like, okay, this is the narrative. What do the facts actually say? Okay, there's this insolvencies, and I'm certain, the facts do say that insolvencies are up from the year before. But you just have to think logically to go, but that's because everybody started paying back bounce back loans.
Right.
And there was so much support that's been withdrawn. And actually, secondarily, how is this a good thing? Well, it's a good thing because which companies die, Topher? The weaker ones. Yeah. The weaker companies die, right? And so there's opportunity to buy assets cheap.
By the way, okay, so I want to talk about the assets cheap here in a second, but when you just said the weaker ones die, it immediately brought up to me, it's like, okay, but what defines a weak business? And if I were to ask you and say, okay, what's one common characteristic that weak businesses all share, what would that be?
Yeah, a weak balance sheet. I mean, look,
or the inability to even read it.
Well, yes. I mean, there's levels of depth to that point. But disclaimer, I can hear, my lawyer screaming to me in my ear. I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on the internet. However, my understanding, there's two definitions of insolvency. I mean, really, insolvency means the inability to pay your bills when they become due. But how that works pragmatically, Topher. See, I'm on my favorite topic now. How that works pragmatically, so there's two definitions.
I teed you up.
Yeah, there you go. It's almost like we prepare for these podcasts. There's balance sheet insolvency, and balance sheet insolvency is when your liabilities outstrip your assets. But the second type is cash flow insolvency, right? So this is where your assets might be massive, but you don't have the cash flow to pay your bills. So classically, a lot of people on a personal level, so moved away from corporate, somebody can be massively wealthy and have all their wealth tied up in a house that they live in that's paid off, but they've got no income. So they can't pay their council tax, right? They can't pay their bills.
Yeah. Well, I think, when you look at it that way as well, this explains why so many times when businesses are going through massive elements of growth, they have cash flow issues, right? They have all of their cash tied up in their assets, but that doesn't mean that they can pay the bills. I've got one of my clients right now is going through the same thing. His company's growing at such a fast clip. He's now suffering some cash flow issues because it's growing faster than he has the ability to pay out that debt.
Well, it's business 101, right?
Yeah.
Growth consumes cash, and therein lies the problem. That's why, I mean, look, how many examples do you want? Do you want to talk about Richard Branson in his book, Losing My Virginity, where he was basically borderline insolvent until he sold Virgin Music to bankroll Virgin Atlantic? Do you want to talk about Shoe Dog? So Phil Knight of Nike, who was basically the whole book until they floated on the stock market, created the liquidity to make him wealthy. He was always insolvent. And the reason why is because in most businesses, growth consumes cash. Because there's got to be the investment in advance, right, into the assets, into the people, into the teams, into the marketing that creates sales and profits later downstream.
That's I think that's got to be one of the most hypnotic or seductive things in a bad way for small businesses. Like, we all know that growth consumes cash, but man, when you're in it and you've got growth, it's so easy to get slipped into this false sense of security going, oh, this is great. But it's like, it's almost, I want to say, would you agree or disagree with this? I don't know about this. Do you think it's better to be perhaps even more pessimistic the faster you're growing?
I think it's important to have somebody around you that can give you a sense check, right? Yeah. Because I mean, look, it's obvious and it goes hand in hand. When things are going well, I mean, look at the previous fail of the week, Sam Bankman-Fried. When things are going well, and like you told, your net worth has shot up in 3 years to 22 billion or whatever ridiculous scale it is. And then as soon as he's now folded, he looks and goes, oh my God, that company was run so badly. But of course, when you and everybody around you has become insanely wealthy beyond your wildest dreams, you tend to you get blind spots. Your ego gets in the way. Yeah.
Well, God, what's fun is I'm at this place where I think I could do a whole podcast on this topic alone. I'm aware that we have other things we got to get to, like our fail of the week and our hero of the week. But I gotta say this. What this reminds me of a lot is, do you remember at the last mastermind you were talking about what was it? Something about analytics. And you talked about there was 3 components to be able to do a data analysis effectively. The data has to be accurate, it has to be relevant, and it has to be sufficient. And when I look at headlines like this, where it says UK insolvencies are bigger than it's been in 13 years, I immediately go to that and I go, okay, is that accurate? Yes. Is it relevant? Yes. But is it sufficient? No, because you have to ask yourself, well, why didn't they go 14 years back or 15 years back or 16 years back? Well, they didn't, because if they would have, it wouldn't have been sufficient. And I think if business owners would start getting that trifecta of how information comes to them, is it accurate? Is it relevant? Is it sufficient? They'd be a hell of a lot better than just reading the headlines and assuming it's true.
There's 2 points that kick off that for me. I mean, it helps to have a slightly skeptical mind, because when I see headlines, I think normally the opposite is true. And that's not a conspiracy theory way. That's just like how it's spun. You can spin the same thing 2 entirely different ways, as I did with that story, right? But let me give a story which brings this to life. Now, this is hot and topical at the moment, Tova, and involves a billionaire and 8 figures in cash injection into a company. So I'm going to have to change some of the details because it's not publicly available information.
Sure.
But I recently connected a client with a billionaire.
A mutual friend. Yeah.
Correct. A mutual friend of ours. Yeah. And the reason why is, and let's call him Dave, and let's just say it's a property business, right? It's a capital intensive business.
Anytime we start changing the names to protect our clients without getting, I always do I need to write down a scorecard of what fake names we use for real people? Dave is the billionaire. Or is Dave?
Dave is the client. Dave's the
client. Okay, got it. What's the billionaire's name? What are we going to call him?
Alex.
Sure, not a problem. So right. Dave and Alex.
By the way, I don't mess up on names. I've got a little code, Tova, which I'm not going to spell out online, obviously. But so if you ever get me to tell stories that I've told in the past when I've changed names, I'll be able to get the name right every time. But that's a separate.
Really?
Yep. Anyway, we'll talk about that off air.
All right.
Anyway,
I gotta learn
so
that
to the
one.
point. I'm now going to screw it up and say the actual name.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
I went to Alex and said, look, Alex said, I'm looking for investment opportunities because this is a side note that people who are poor, Topher, or said differently, when I was first starting out in business, I always felt I had all these ideas, but no money. Mm-hmm. And I remember Keith Cunningham, who's up here, if you're watching this on the podcast, Keith Cunningham saying to me, Dan, there's more money around than there are good ideas. That's the problem. And I didn't get it. Whereas now, 10, 15 years later, I'm going, I get it now. I get it. Yeah. Like the problem is when you've accumulated wealth, not that I claim to be on Alex's level by any stretch, but once you've accumulated wealth, where do I put it where it can get a good, strong return? Anyway, so Alex says, Dan, I'm looking for investment opportunities. He said, what are you looking for? He said a variety of things, but one was in a specific area inside of property. Yeah. And I went, yeah, okay, great. And so I'm always trying to connect people up in my network, in my mastermind, I'm trying to connect up. And I have a client who's got a great property-related business doing well, but the nature of that business is it's capital heavy, right? So in order to scale, you need to buy more properties. It's not this, but to be simplistic, if you've got a buy-to-let property business, to get your income up, you need to have more properties to rent out. Yes, you can raise rents, but you can only raise it so far. You've got to buy another asset. Mm-hmm. And then the quicker you're growing, your financials haven't caught up yet. So the banks won't lend beyond a certain level, even if it's a great opportunity. It's not safe enough. You're growing too quickly. You need to consolidate, which is exactly what Dave had been told. And I went, great. Dave, Alex, Dave. And we had a meeting at his house in London. And it was it's everything that you would expect a billionaire's house to look like. It was it was well, some people wouldn't like it, but I thought it was magnificent. It was wonderful. It was glorious. Yeah. And so we're there, and I've been quite fortunate to be around a lot of wealthy people in my time, and Dave less so. So you could see that he was a little bit intimidated. Anyway, but even I was surprised by this. Yeah, but... Topher. I know you went, oh, can I say the name Topher? And so I'm keeping myself on a high alert. Story? Yeah, exactly. Trevor. No, anyway. So the I've never seen 10 million be offered so quickly ever before in a meeting. Wow. It was literally, and by the way, this was a small business, 7-figure revenues, very profitable, less than 30 minutes in. And Alex offered Dave 10 million. Now, I'm not going to say more specific in that of the terms because that would be inappropriate. Sure. It was that amount, an 8-figure amount of cash was put on the table at a high level in principle as an offer. It was absolutely outrageous.
How did Dave respond to that? Was he prepped for that or prepared to get like a proposal right then and there?
No, he didn't expect it. In fact, he even outwardly said so. In fact, the reason Alex put it on the table is because he asked Dave what he wanted, and Dave stumbled. He was deer in the headlights, and he said, I didn't think we'd be here this quickly, and he kind of panicked. He didn't mess up the meeting because he had to have answered the questions well enough that Alex was willing to put that money on the table. But here's the point. The point is, from what I've said, if Dave has got a very profitable property-related business, and it's growing and it's making money, like why would you sell equity? Why would you why would you need to even do this?
I know, because growth consumes cash.
Correct. And so in a way, Dave had a choice. This is overly simplistic, and by the way, feel free to kick back on me if you disagree with this, but I'm saying this is a simplistic, there's more nuances on the scale. It's not either end. But Dave could just sit back and reap the rewards. You know what? The business is getting traction, it's paying down the debt, and now it's producing good profits. Okay, great, and be very happy. But he wants to expand. But in order to expand, he's got to put back all his profits reinvested into the next asset, which means that he's constantly running like a Phil Knight, like a Richard Branson for the next bit of growth, and then you never get paid. Investment over at its roots is deferring money now to get more money later. That's it. That's the whole game. Now the question is, how much money now? How much money later? How long later? Right? And how likely is it to work? They're the fundamental tenets of all investment and the business game from a long-term strategic growth point of view. And so I don't know whether Dave is going to do this deal with Alex or not, because he's torn. He's going, I've just got to the point where I'm great and life is good. And unless something goes wrong, he is financially set for life. But you know what?
Something could go wrong.
Oh, well, it could go wrong, but he's bored. Because, of course, doing the deal could make it go wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Doing the deal could make it go wrong. Because if you take 10 million from somebody with a much higher net worth than you, like, it'll just blow your mind. In fact, let me say it another way, Topher. Here's an interesting dynamic. Refers to the book of last week's podcast, Predictably Irrational. Right? It talks about the contrast frame. When we're talking about it, when I was talking about it with Dave, I said, look, he was like, I cannot believe Alex offered the money that fast. I cannot believe it. And I went, yeah, well, you've got to remember, I would predict Dave's net worth to be something like 2 million and Alex's to be something like 2 billion, if you believe
I was
what
going to say it's a factor of 1,000. Oh.
Correct. Yeah. So what does that mean? I said to Dave, I said, look, for Alex to put 10 million on the line is like you putting 10 grand on the line.
Yeah. The risk is completely different.
Well, as in, because I said to Dave, I said, if you had somebody that you knew that had a really good business idea that was really exciting and you thought could really go places, would you place a £10,000 investment in their company? And I know how much he makes and I know how much he's got in his bank account. And he goes, yeah, of course. And I go, yeah, I know you would. I would too. And I said, and in relative amounts, that's correct. That's why he's comfortable offering that much money that quickly. Because it's a relative amount. So looping back, growth consumes cash. And also, it helps to be well connected. It's probably a second one.
Indeed. Dude, first off, do you realize, I don't know how long we've been talking, this one segment has been an amazing podcast. And we haven't even gotten into the fail of the week and the hero of the week. But let's move on, because I think, like I said, we could talk about this one all day. But let's talk about the fail of the week.
This is fantastic. The fail of the week. It actually goes back.
Wait. By the way, let's tease them, because the fail of the week is directly tied into the hero of the week as well. So these two stories just go together like, I don't know.
Ketchup and mayonnaise?
Peanut butter and jelly is what I was going to go for. Yeah.
It's funny. I think this is a great example to talk about, Topher, and I'm also nervous. Because transparently, as two heterosexual white males, middle age, we don't have any right to talk about this whatsoever in the context that in what it's about, but we do in the context of business.
Agreed, 100%. We're walking on eggshells.
I'm sweating. So with all that said, the fail of the week was from 222. It was Burger King's shocking Pride campaign. So I believe this campaign was done for Pride Week, and Burger King. And it's important. I want to say, if I'm laughing, if anybody sees me laugh or smirk, it's because I'm embarrassed and feel awkward, not necessarily because I think it's funny. But Burger King said, "How do we kind of get in on this?" And they basically said, "Hey, you can make your own Whopper." And you can either have your Whopper be with either two top buns or two bottom buns.
Right.
So, but either way, it's with two equal buns, right? And so I don't know what they were trying to do or thinking to do, but the backlash was immense, Topher. It was immense.
I want to go back in time and be in that creative meeting to see who is making this decision, because I'm guessing it was a lot of heterosexual people, or like there might have been maybe a few gay or lesbian people in there, but clearly ones that have like it's easy for you and I to laugh at each other or to laugh at ourselves, right? So like you could be in a room like that. And so there could have been maybe a gay or lesbian executive in there going, oh, this is funny, but didn't think about how that, if he or she stepped out of the picture, how it might be really offensive to other people that aren't in that decision-making process. It's just crazy.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's tricky, Toph, because again, this is where I feel like I might be treading on my toes. If at a conceptual level, at a meta level, you kind of go, what are they trying to do? They are trying to sell more of their product. Now, don't get me wrong, they might genuinely, meaningfully be behind Pride and Gay Pride,
sure.
and Pride Week, and they might be behind that and trying to support that, but actually they're trying to promote the product, and there's nothing wrong with that. Right. However, and I'm also careful of, anything you do is going to be offensive to some people some of the times. Yeah. So it's interesting because I can see the intent. It was kind of, the pitch was, it's the Pride Whopper. It's the same ingredients, but with 2 equal buns, either 2 top halves, 2 bottom halves, right? And they ended up getting so much abuse from people online that, well, it was just an absolute train wreck, and let alone, so this ignores the logistical problem. So they're doing it to make things better, but they get all this hate now. Well, just imagine what was going on operationally as well, because now they've got training, right, and stock issues.
I was going to say, in inventory as well, right? They can have an overabundance of bottoms or overabundance of top buns as well. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure there is a formula in there somewhere, and I bet maybe we should get like a marketing expert on our show to talk about this. But they had the right intent, but their execution was incredibly poor.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. I mean, this was a quote. Burger King could have taken advantage of Pride Month to give us pretty patties, but they decided to stoop to stale sex jokes instead. And there's just a litany of comments like this. Yeah. And by contrast, I'm going to make this relevant for all small business owners now. Think about the complexity of this and the hassle it created versus this week's hero of the week.
And like I said, these two complement each other so well. So the hero is McDonald's.
Right, McDonald's with their again, this was from last year, but their menu hack. So in the pandemic, when menus were shortened and abbreviated, McDonald's played, in my view, a not on the pride vibe, but on an inclusive, get people involved vibe of order our products by name and build by hand. So what is it called, Toph? When you have fish and steak, what's that thing called?
Surf and turf.
Yeah, right. So effectively, McDonald's said, hey, get our surf and turf, which was basically you get a fillet of fish and you get a double cheeseburger, right? And you put the two together, right? Yeah. And by the way, and here's the brilliance of this. It made it cute, it made it inclusive, but they didn't actually. McDonald's staff did not actually put a fillet of fish and a double cheeseburger together and call it surf and turf. No, they literally went, you ordered a surf and turf, and they went, here you go. Put it together yourself.
You should do. Build it on your own. Brilliant. No additional training, no additional inventory.
But it went viral. Yeah. So that, because what I like about it is because it actually got the customers included. It got them like, hey, come on. So people were doing this and then, putting the fillet fish in the middle of the additional patties and, etc. And then taking photos and sharing it on social media. In fact, let me have a quick work. It wasn't just surf and turf. What else was it?
They had an air, land, and sea, which was a chicken, beef, and fish.
Right, exactly. I like it. Oh yeah, and then I can see another one now, a crunchy double, which was chicken McNuggets inside of a double cheeseburger. Yeah. So it just that was a great example of it. It was just a little bit creative. It was a little bit cute, but without being deeply offensive.
Interesting. If you pull back and you look at Burger King and you look at McDonald's and what they did, there's some interesting patterns there because, like, one of them, Burger King, the gag was about the customer, right?
Yes.
But with McDonald's, the gag was about McDonald's, right? So they were essentially, and I don't think, by the way, my eggshells are coming back here. I don't mean to sound like anybody was making a joke about anything, right? But the focus of attention, and when I say gag, that's what I'm talking about. Like the focus of attention, Burger King made it about the consumer. McDonald's made it about themselves, right? So there was no energy that had to be deflected on that. And I think that's there's got to be a pattern in there in terms of if you're trying something edgy, and let's face it, listen, small business owners are kind of like the comedians of the business world, right? We're the ones that are supposed to push the envelope, test things, try out new things, be innovative, right? And yes, there is the risk of going too far in some areas, but you can be smart about it by going, okay, well, what's the consequence and where's the focus of attention? McDonald's made the consumer the hero because they were the ones coming up with the ideas and building things. Burger King made the consumer the butt of the joke. And I think that's where they really went wrong.
Got to give your marketing some thought, Topher. And looping it all back together now, let's get to the book of the week.
Yeah, interesting. By the way, it goes all the way back to the very first thing about the titles about the UK insolvencies, which is how to lie with. By the way, this is an interesting title of a book. We could have a conversation about marketing about this one as well. How to Lie with Statistics by Daryl Huff. A great book, but it kind of on the surface, the title makes it sound like you're trying to learn how to lie, and that's not what the book is about.
Right. I love this book. It's totally underrated, tiny, thin little book. Yeah. And I'm a bit of a maths geek, so I love it. But so many people would look at this and just dismiss it out of hand. But it's really about marketing. It's about positioning. It's about, and people are much more clued up on this now since the pandemic, because it's how data can be represented or misrepresented or positioned, let's say, different ways. It's kind of like, is it going up or is it going down? Well, are we talking about the growth rate, or are we talking the rate at which it's going up or down? Are we talking about the overall, right? Is the growth rate accelerating or slowing down? And depending on what we're talking about and how it's positioned, because the vast majority of people are predictably irrational. They'll see the headline and that's it. They won't think deeper.
Yeah. Or even looking at how companies will just use the word average without saying whether it was the mean average or the median average, which are two totally different things as well. And this book really, by the way, you're a math geek. You're into the numbers. I'm not. But this book is written for people like me that aren't very strong with numbers and don't understand data. And it just dumbs it down to easily understandable. It's a great book.
Yeah, I like it. And look, it can be used two ways. So I'm aware that we're saying this, but perhaps the slightly more nefarious 20-year-old version of myself would use this to go, oh, how can I position myself and make myself look the coolest? Yeah. Whereas it's kind of like Cialdini's influence, right? It's kind of like, okay, he wrote the book to stop people being influenced and taken advantage of, but people could use it and say, here's how we sell and misrepresent and take advantage. And this is the same thing. It's like, here's how to represent data to make it tell the story that you want. But equally, having the knowledge arms you. It arms you to prevent you from being taken advantage of.
By the way, this is a perfect tee up for me to come back full circle with the book of the week, which was recommended maybe about a month ago, which you recommended, called The Way of the Wolf. I remember we had this conversation. I told you how much I don't like the guy. I only met him once and I was turned off by the guy. And you said, set aside his ethics and his integrity, read the book. And by the way, I just finished one of my business book reviews about the book, and I gave it a 2 out of 5 head tilts because I rate my Macy's head tilts. In fact, on that one, I said it's a 2 out of 5 head tilts and a piss on the book of the cover from my dog, not me. And it's interesting you just said the 20-year-old version of you, because I said my review is this. There are some sound techniques in the book, and I have to agree with you on that one. But I question the effect of a 20-year-old reading that book versus a 50-year-old reading that book. Right? Like as a 50-year-old, well, I'm not 50. What am I? Yeah, I'm 54.
You're past 50, dude.
Yeah. So as a 50-year-old, I can read that book and I can pick out the sound techniques without the risk of adopting the unethical nature of things. But I think a 20-year-old could read that book and really get steered down the wrong direction. So it's interesting.
Right,
so
and so agree with you. Without getting too wishy-washy, with that statement made, do you think we've just sold more books to 20-year-olds or 50-year-olds?
Yes, and that was my concern. I was like, okay, I'm reviewing this book. I'm going to and I go, the guy will probably thank me and send me a box of cigars or something, because I'm probably selling more of his books by giving it a 2 out of 5 star rating and talking about that. Yeah. Anyway, but same kind of thing with this book.
Right. Controversial. Well, having said all that, that takes on perfectly to this week's quote of the week. Yeah. And this is this is from Joe Chernov, who's the CMO for Pendo and previously for a VP of marketing for HubSpot. And he says, good marketing makes the company look smart. Great marketing makes the customer feel smart.
I love that. By the way, that ties perfectly with Burger King made them look smart, as in witty, right? And McDonald's made the customers look smart by coming up with all these creative ways to hack their menus, right? It's just, it ties in so perfectly with that.
You know what? I'd summarize this in a word, so you know what it ties in for me?
What's that?
Ego.
Yeah.
Ego, right? It's kind of like, almost, what's the intent behind it?
Yeah.
Right? Is the intent to be self-aggrandizing, or is the intent to genuinely help somebody?
Yeah, here's another great example of this. And I think this was a book that we recommended a while back. If not, it'll eventually get on there. Is Building Your Story Brand, right? When he talks about, when he talks about how like he looks at the archetypes of like Star Wars and Luke Skywalker and Yoda and Darth Vader, and how a company can build a story around that. And, you know, the Yoda, you would think needs to be the company or the product solving the problem. But in fact, it's not the way it is. We want to make the consumer the Yoda, the wise one. And I think this quote kind of summarizes that pretty well.
I'm kicking myself now, Topher, because we are this close to the end of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot in good conscience let you get away with that statement, because you've just completely misrepresented the book.
Did I? No.
Yeah.
Did I misrun it?
Yeah,
okay, correct me, please. Listen,
yeah.
You know me, man. I'm the person who loves being
your
wrong.
Your intent is good, because, by the way, and by a weird coincidence, I just received Donald Miller's latest book via Amazon today. So, but don't even ask me the title, because I can't remember it, because I saw it, ordered it, because I like him as an author. But Building a Story Brand, in my opinion, is still his best book that I've read of his, at least so far. So, so for those listening, pick up the book, read it. But it compares like movie scripts, like a Star Wars used as an example, and it says most people make the company marketing the Luke Skywalker, and you make your customer the Luke Skywalker.
Yes, that's what it was. I'm sorry, you are right, 100%, and I'm glad you corrected me. Yes.
And the point being that you make the company the Yoda, i.e. the company is the wise sage that advises the hero on their journey.
That's what it was. See, yeah. Luke Skywalker is the hero of the subject, and that's your customer. I'm glad you corrected me on that one, because I would have felt like an idiot. Still feel like an idiot, but at least we have clarity.
Yeah, and you still are an idiot. Yeah. So with that said, as a proof in the pudding, this is why you're not done. You don't get to read a book one time and then call yourself an expert. At the end of the day, if you're listening to this podcast, we're here because we are obsessed with learning. We want to be better, become more. Because if you want to have the effect of a better business, if you want a better business, you need to become a better business owner. And that's what you're finding right here.
There you go. All right, mate. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 Steps to Improving Your Profits and Cash Flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.